Just ahead on One Detroit. This year's Detroit Jazz Festival artist-in-residence Karriem Riggins talks about his new role, and we'll have a performance by the renowned drummer. Also coming up, a report on how climate change is causing some Detroit houses to fall into disrepair. Plus, opera meets flamenco and Detroit Opera's performance of Ainadamar Fountain of Tears. And if you're looking for something to do in Metro Detroit this weekend, we'll have some suggestions. It's all coming up next on One Detroit.
From Delta Faucets to Behr Paint, Masco Corporation is proud to deliver products that enhance the way consumers all over the world experience and enjoy their living spaces. Masco, serving Michigan communities since 1929. Support for this program is provided by the Cynthia and Edsel Ford Fund for Journalism at Detroit Public TV, the Kresge Foundation.
The DTE Foundation is a proud sponsor of Detroit Public TV, among the state's largest foundations committed to Michigan-focused giving. We support organizations that are doing exceptional work in our state. Visit dtefoundation.com to learn more.
Nissan Foundation and viewers like you.
Just ahead on this week's One Detroit, we'll look at how climate change is leading to major structural issues for Detroit's older homes. Plus, the star of Detroit Opera's Ainadamar Fountain of Tears talks about her role as revolutionary poet Federico Garcia Lorca. And Dave Wagner and Cecilia Sharp of 90.9 WRCJ share some ideas on how to spend this weekend in Metro Detroit. But first up, the Detroit Jazz Festival Foundation has announced its lineup for the Labor Day weekend event and introduced this year's artist-in-residence, Detroit native Karriem Riggins. The renowned drummer will spend the year participating in educational and community activities. Riggins sat down with John Penney, host of Jazz Fest Detroit on 90.9 WRCJ, after teaching a masterclass for Wayne State University music students.
Great job, Melody. Great job. One thing I will say about this is I learned from playing with Ray Brown, when you don't know it, when in doubt, lay out. Like if you don't know the changes, just lay out. If you know the roots, you just play the roots until it can gel, you know what I'm saying?
Karriem, I'm just so thrilled that you're here. Welcome home.
Thank you.
And I'm really excited that you're sitting in this chair this year for the Detroit Jazz Festival. What is your earliest recollection of the Jazz Festival?
I would frequently come to the festival every year. My dad had some kind of show, so I just remember as early as maybe 7, 8 years old, I got a chance to just run from stage to stage to kind of peek in on what was going on.
Jazz, if you're going to talk about a genre, I think is the broadest and most inclusive tent because it's always evolving. And I think a lot of that evolution follows technology.
Yeah.
I'm curious, how are you going to put all this together? What are your thoughts for the festival this year?
Well, one thing I want to speak on is talking about the jazz people, jazz police. Like, I really can care less about what people think is jazz or not because it's what comes from here. And sometimes what comes from here, you can't put a label on, you know, it's something from the heart. So that is something that was just instilled in me from the beginning, is having my background and roots in hip hop, and I grew up listening to jazz. So all these different genres, I feel like the more you read, the more articulate you are in expressing yourself. And I feel like listening to music is the same thing. Like the more you listen to different things, you can bridge those gaps and it becomes one thing, But for me, I feel like, integrating all these different instruments, it's my voice, loops, finding different loops. It's a starting point, and sometimes we arrive at a different place from it just being a loop. So that's where everything is kind of in a melting pot together. It's like a gumbo, a soup that you make, and there's so many different elements in there that makes it special.
I found it really interesting in one interview you were talking about how with Common, working on his record, it was all beats that I mean, take a lot to put together. But then with August Green, which is you, Common, and Robert Glasper, you were playing all that live. So, you know, there's that kind of interaction back and forth. You know, so who are you going to be bringing to the festival to?
It's going to be quite a surprise.
You aren't going to tell us?
I don't really have anything to say now at this point, but I will say that, you know, it will be some of the people that I've been collaborating with over the years.
I would be surprised if August Green doesn't make it. Let's just put it that way.
I want to definitely do something that I haven't done before, and that is takes a little more effort and work, you know, so that's what I want to bring to the city, something special. And it's not just the city, because you know, there's millions of people who get to watch this festival, and I just want to make such a huge statement. Much better. I feel like, you know, just that little space makes a big difference.
How do you feel you were working with kids today here? How are they evolving, and how do you think the music is evolving for that generation?
Well, I could just hear, you know, it's becoming more of a thing now because people listen to so much different kind of music. You know, Spotify and Tidal and all these digital streaming platforms have so much. You can just jump from here. You can listen to Marygrove, and you can go to Phineas Newborn, and then you can go to a K-Tronada or Madlib or myself, you know, and I feel like you can hear those influences in the youth playing now.
You went out with Betty Carter when she was when you were 17. What did you learn playing with Betty, and what was it like?
Well, what I did with Betty Carter was a jazz ahead, where she flew out, I think it was like 5 musicians from Detroit, and I think like 7 other cities. She had a lot of musicians come in, and we all wrote music, and we all had to interpret each other's music. And I think that she was looking for us to play and be original and not be cliche. So if she heard us or seen anything that was cliche, she would like, no, do your thing, you know? And I feel like that kind of pushed me to be original and not to follow any kind of cliches, you know?
Yeah.
No copying. Playing that last tune, when you went into those fills, you should definitely like zone in on those fills and play be you, you know, throughout all of that.
The first tune?
Yeah, the first tune,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Throughout, like setting up those fills, you know, specific setting up certain fills, but I know you can do it in your own way where you're speaking with your voice.
And that's hard to do. I mean, if you're just playing with the notes and the scale, but the way you can express them with all the different sounds and combinations of sounds.
I think now it's a lot easier creatively, you know, to see the sound wave on the screen. You can find the downbeat because it's a big bubble, and you say, oh, that's something there. Instead of using numbers, I think back when the MPC 3000 was around, using those numbers will kind of take up the space of you and the flow of being creative. So I feel like there's more room for creativity now because your workflow is faster. So it's all about getting the idea out and being prolific and move on to the next. And that's why I really want to achieve just being prolific and creating as much as I can while I'm here on this earth.
You're my favorite kind of drummer. I mean, it's like the right lick in the right place. I mean, I love Art Blakey, but he's out front.
Yeah.
You've been described as skeletal, but and I think that's a positive thing. I mean, it's the bone against which all the flesh can be grown.
That's what I strive to achieve through practicing, is trying to find that right thing to play that make people feel. The drummer's supposed to make you dance and feel something, and that is what I want to achieve every time I play. I think I just learned just from being around great musicians is that less is more. Like the simplicity in it speaks more. You said more by leaving room, leaving space, and just playing the groove. So I've worked so much, I think, by just being simple and playing the groove.
And we'll have a performance by Karriem Riggins coming up later on in the show. Plus, you can see the Detroit Jazz Festival lineup of artists at onedetroitpbs.org. Turning now to our continuing coverage for Earth Month. Climate change is having a big impact on residents in Southeast Michigan. One Detroit's Bill Kubota shows us how the harsher weather is causing major damage to older homes in Detroit.
And so if you want to take us back through.
Problem areas, I guess we can come through this way.
Simone Alexander's showing home repair pro Tim Bishop her water damage on Detroit's northeast side.
You see the cause and effect there, huh? The roof has been leaking for some time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like this wood over here is rotted,
Yeah.
so it has to be replaced before we're able to do anything on the inside.
Yeah, that's way worse than I thought. That's going to have to be restructured, so.
Normally you would be like, it's raining, it's a cool, calm day, but then when you got house issues, you're like, please don't rain today. You can stay cloudy, don't rain. Because it come right in the house.
For want of a roof, add structural repairs, new ceilings, and electrical work.
You've been at this for a while. Have you seen it get more significant or worse even?
I think it's gotten a lot more significant the last several years. I've been director since 1986. Don't think I've seen anything like what we've seen in the last, say, 5 years or so. It seems to be common now to hear on the radio news as you're driving home, this is the worst amount of rain in this period of time in, 30 years or 40 years or ever.
This spot is kind of new. This one shocked me when it came down.
The United Community Housing Coalition helps Detroiters avoid tax foreclosure and keeps them in their homes despite the weather's toll.
These houses are more susceptible to climate change, I think, because they don't have good roofs. It's an older structure and a lot of deferred maintenance down here, so it's going to impact these houses even more so.
With more storms, more high winds, damage from old trees.
It affects gutters. Gutters fall, collapse, they're not maintained, but they have standing water against the foundation like this here.
So much deferred maintenance. How long can these homes last?
Unfortunately, though, we don't have the luxury of saying we just are going to get rid of it all and build new housing, because the reality is there isn't enough to build enough low-income housing. What passes as affordable housing is usually what's called low-income tax credit housing. And I was just looking the other day that the top rent level for low-income tax credit housing is like $1,200 a month. Many of the people that we represent, even working, are at $2,000 or less a month. So the affordable housing that we call affordable housing in that fashion is not very affordable.
Simone Alexander's got more problems downstairs.
Yeah, so how far does this spread out?
Just this little spot.
Drainage trouble, nothing like the big flood 2 years ago. Lost memorabilia and damaged appliances, but the pets can stay down here for now.
So we did the furnace a couple years ago during COVID. Now we're going to follow back up. We're going to put central air, attach central air to the system, courtesy of DTE. AC may seem like a luxury, but if it does heat up more and more, it becomes more of a necessity, right?
Yeah, it does.
It will be expensive to run that central air. I mean, climate change is going to affect you one way or another. It's going to run your utility bill up, and that just gobbles up more of your, if somebody's on a limited income, that just takes a, disproportionate amount out of their pocket.
For more of our climate change coverage, go to onedetroitpbs.org. Let's turn now to Detroit Opera's presentation this month of Ainadamar, which translates to Fountain of Tears. The production blends flamenco, rumba rhythms, and classical singing to tell the story of Spanish poet and playwright Federico Garcia Lorca. In an episode of Detroit Performs live from Marygrove, host Satori Shakoor spoke with mezzo-soprano Daniela Mack, who plays the lead role.
I want to welcome Daniela Mack, who plays Lorca in the opera Ainadamar. Welcome, Daniela.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
So how do you prepare for your role? And you're playing a man, is that what I understand?
I am. This is a trouser role is what we call it in opera, or a pants role. And I'm a mezzo-soprano, so the range that I have is lower than a soprano, and I actually play quite a number of men on stage. So it's something that's not entirely out of my wheelhouse. For this, Lorca was such an iconic, famous, world-famous author, poet, playwright. So there is a little bit of studying the physicality from photographs and trying to channel what I think he may have been like. But since this is not in any way a biography, there's a little bit more freedom in ambiguity, since I am, I'm not fooling anybody, I'm actually a woman.
Yes, yes. And as an artist, how do you approach your role?
Well, for Lorca, thankfully, there's just a wealth of information about him, and he wrote so much. So in this particular instance, I had read in school when I was in high school a couple of his plays. So I had sort of a basis for some of what he wrote. And in preparation for this, I dived into some of his poetry, which I had not picked up. And just reading more about his life and seeing what he was about, and realizing that the central message in this piece, even if it's not exactly only about his life, the connection that he spoke about and wrote about is definitely present in the piece.
How does this particular opera, how does it relate to today? And why is this story important to share?
The idea that everybody is deserving of love and that it knows no bounds. It doesn't know, or it's not beholden to life. It doesn't know the boundary between life and death. Love continues and connection continues. I think that's an important message regardless of, time period or what's going on in the world. Specifically, anything dealing with the life of Lorca, which this definitely touches on, is important because he was, by his own admission, a champion for people who didn't have a voice. He wanted to use his pen to be the voice of people that didn't have a voice. And he also, as a gay man, he was very much persecuted for his lifestyle and for his sexuality, which is sadly not something that is foreign to us or changed very much at all. And I think that is, of course, timely and important. And art exists for art's sake, but also to create awareness. And I think this piece absolutely does that.
What songs in particular energize you, drive you, inspire you in the piece?
That's a really good question. It's really hard to choose. It's not a very long piece, but I think every single moment is just this very energetic and clear picture painted in each moment. There's a huge dance element inherent in the music, but also in this production. And it's very heavily influenced by flamenco. And so the energy that those scenes in particular create are just, I can't sit without a smile on my face watching it and listening to it. And it's full of toe tapping music. It's the kind of piece where you're gonna walk out of the theater humming a tune because it's very melodic and it's very easily accessible in that way.
Well, thank you, Daniela Mack.
Thank you very much.
Who plays the role of Lorca. We can't wait to see.
Thank you.
Margarita, tú eres toda si eres una, la más trágica y heroica. Fuiste Electra, Salomé, fuiste Antígona furiosa y Lady Macbeth, pero no Ofelia sino Hamlet. Pero ahora seré tuya, porque haré Mariana Margarita, esta obra no es política. Oh, ¿y entonces por qué la has escrito? Porque estoy enamorado de Mariana.
Ainadamar Fountain of Tears is one of the events in this week's One Detroit Weekend, Here's Cecilia Sharp and Dave Wagner of 90.9 WRCJ with more on the performance and other things to see and do this weekend and beyond.
Hi there, I'm Dave Wagner with 90.9 WRCJ.
And I'm C Sharp with 90.9 WRCJ. Dave, April is Jazz Appreciation Month, and it's also National Poetry Month. Have you got poetry on the brain?
I do, exactly. You may be a poet and not even know it because it's live poetry open mic in Livonia at Navio's Hobby Lounge, Friday, beginning at 8 p.m. So for a few hours, audiences can expect a diverse chorus of voices from a vast array of professional spoken word performers, open mic rookies, and musicians. Cecilia, have you ever written any poetry?
I have.
Share a couple of verses? Yeah?
No, I don't think the people are ready for that yet. You still have time to see Ainadamar, Fountain of Tears by Osvaldo Golijov at the Detroit Opera House, with performances Friday night and Sunday afternoon. This opera reimagines the life of revolutionary poet Federico Garcia Lorca and includes phenomenal flamenco music and dancing, along with incredible vocal talent of the opera performers. It's a story we should all know.
Absolutely. And for those that love theater, let's talk about the play Gotta Make It Last at the Marygrove Theater in Detroit, with 2 shows on Saturday, one at 3 p.m. and the other at 7 p.m. Now, this play deals with knowing your friends, your mate, and just how far a mother will go to protect her own. Tickets are $30 and they're available at the door.
Also on Saturday, it's the start of Pledge Drive for us at 90.9 WRCJ. Dave, can you tell us a little bit about this upcoming drive?
Sure can. Our spring campaign kicks off bright and early, 8 a.m. Saturday morning, with a music special put together by our own Peter Wharf and yours truly. And the audience will have a chance to win recordings of the complete music of Beethoven.
All you music lovers out there, be sure to tune in because you don't want to miss out on that. Here are a few other events going on around Detroit to take in and enjoy. Hope to see you around and have a great weekend.
That will do it for this week's One Detroit. Thanks for watching. We're going to leave you now with a performance by this year's Detroit Jazz Festival Artist-in-Residence, drummer and producer Karriem Riggins, recorded at the Jazz Festival's preview event this week.
Delta faucets to Behr paint, Masco Corporation is proud to deliver products that enhance the way consumers all over the world experience and enjoy their living spaces. Masco, serving Michigan communities since 1929. Support for this program is provided by the Cynthia and Edsel Ford Fund for Journalism at Detroit Public TV, the Kresge Foundation.
The DTE Foundation is a proud sponsor of Detroit Public TV, among the state's largest foundations committed to Michigan-focused giving. We support organizations that are doing exceptional work in our state. Visit dtefoundation.com to learn more.
Nissan Foundation, and viewers like you.